KRQE, your local election headquarters, presents Albuquerque mayoral runoff debate.
Good evening and welcome to KRQE News 13, your local election headquarters. I'm Dean Staley.
And I'm Jessica Gaddete. In this final debate of the 2025 Albuquerque mayoral race, we'll hear from the final two candidates battling to become Albuquerque's next mayor. Our candidates are well known to the people of Albuquerque. They include the current mayor, Tim Keller, and former Bernalillo County Sheriff, Darren White. The two emerged as the top vote getters in the general election last month. Neither candidate secured the 50% threshold needed to win outright.
Tim Keller is seeking his third consecutive term as Albuquerque's mayor. Early in his political career, Keller served as state senator for the International District from 2009 to 2014. He was also the state auditor from 2015 to 2017.
Darren White was elected Bernalillo County Sheriff in 2000 and again in 2006. He was also appointed as Albuquerque's Public Safety Director in 2009. He later co-founded the medical marijuana producer Pure Life, which he has since sold. And
here are the rules for tonight's debate. We will have 4 topics. Each topic will last roughly 12 minutes.
For the opening question of each topic, each candidate will have a minute and 30 seconds to respond. Then we will drill down to the finer details and the differences between the candidates.
At the end of the debate, each candidate will get 1 minute for closing statements. Timing for the first question in each topic and closing statements will be kept here in the studio, and we will be holding up time cards for the candidates to see.
The order for the candidates' questions was decided by coin flip.
First off is a topic that is probably the most important to people here in Albuquerque, and that is crime. There are some encouraging numbers about crime of late, but it is widely acknowledged that many people feel that crime is out of control in the city and they do not feel safe.
We'll start with Mr. White. What would you do right away to bring down violent crime and property crime in our city? You have a minute and a half.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. I believe the fundamental role of government is to keep people safe. And that's the way that I will lead. Let me talk about my plan. The first thing I'm going to do on day one is I'm going to start a new search for a chief of police. It'll be an inspirational and strong leader, one that the public can be proud of and our officers can be proud of as well. You know, we have 50 people in our executive command staff in the police department. That's too top heavy. We need to get that narrowed down. And I want to review each one of those positions and, if possible, move them to the field so that they can be on patrol. I want to get back to what's called proactive policing. That's where officers are out on the field and they're not just responding to crime, they're preventing crime. And so, look, this has worked very, very well, this plan, because the Sheriff's Department, State Police, and the DA have been doing Operation Route 66. And Operation Route 66 it was a failure on the mayor's part because they had to take over crime on Central Avenue. But I will tell you, it's been very successful. 1,500 arrests. 15 of those arrests were for homicide-related charges. I want to start a juvenile crime unit with specialized detectives. My plan has been, I presented my plan to the Fraternal Order of Police, and I'm proud that they endorsed my plan and my candidacy for mayor unanimously.
All right. Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Keller, if reelected, what would you do right away to bring down violent crime and property crime in our city? You have a minute and a half.
Well, I appreciate that this question began with an acknowledgement that we finally have crime going down in all categories. It's just recently, it's just this year, but we know what's working, and that's why we have to continue the things that are working. But first and foremost, you have to have the confidence of your police department. And at the end of the day, that is why our police department and the officers who are out there every day have endorsed my candidacy for mayor. It's also why they did not endorse someone who actually has a law enforcement background. It's also why they acknowledge that there is no confidence in the future leadership of Darren White to lead that department, because that is exactly the vote that they gave him. When he was in charge of APD, he got a no confidence vote, almost 80% of the officers. And what's so astonishing is it wasn't even that. He also got a no confidence vote when he was in charge of the state police officers. He even got a no confidence vote from the fire department because he interfered with paramedics on an investigation. You cannot lead our city and you cannot bring crime down if the officers don't have confidence in you. And that is what they have said every time about Darren. Conversely, they have confidence in what I've been doing, using technology to fight crime, using civilianization to free up officers, making sure that we are going after drug dealers, that we're going after the sources of fentanyl, and that we're actually are doing proactive policing, something we started 3 years ago, and we now have in every field command. So it's about building on what's working and not going back to a world of no confidence in fighting crime.
Mr. Keller, thank you. I have a question for you that is, I think about an experience that a lot of people have here in Albuquerque, and that is you see someone driving dangerously, you see someone without a license plate or temp tags, and police seem to be ignoring these sort of infractions. The question is, during your 8 years as mayor, have traffic stops gone up? Because I think there's a real sense that among a lot of people here in Albuquerque that unless your police officers are part of some traffic enforcement, that they almost never pull anyone over.
So traffic stops have gone up under my watch, and we actually do more targeted efforts because officers are freed up to do more actual traffic stops because we're doing automated speed enforcement on our normal thoroughfares. So in other words, we're not wasting as much time them standing out there with a radar gun, busting people going on Coors. We do that automatically with cameras, and that frees officers to go do targeted traffic stops in where they're most needed. Now, the other important part of this question is to just reiterate the fact that we absolutely do those, and we have done more than we did in the past. But it is because of technology. Technology is what frees off officers to actually do more proactive policing and more traffic stops. Now, we do know that is why most people are trying to take their license plates off if they're trying to get away with something bad off their car. But now we have more officers freed up to actually bust them. So these things go together, and it also shows that citywide, we are going to hold people accountable, whether it's through a camera or whether it's by an officer pulling you over. And that is why crime is going down finally in every category. I know we don't feel it yet, but if we continue this for the next few years, we absolutely will have and feel safer every day.
Mr. Keller, can you quantify? You said they've gone up. Can you quantify how much more policing are we doing in terms of traffic stops?
Sure. Off the top of my head, traffic citations went from about 25,000 to around 30,000, and now they're up around 40,000. Now, again, those are just rounded numbers, but they've drastically increased. And I also want to mention that wherever we do have those speed cameras, most importantly, people are going slower, on average 10 miles an hour slower. And that shows that also we can keep our streets safer with respect to pedestrian fatalities, also a major issue. So you see, again, that combination of technology supporting officers to do more proactive policing.
Mr. White,
can I respond?
Yes, your thoughts on traffic stops.
First of all, crime is not going down. You know, the mayor likes, the first thing he said was, crime is the lowest it's been in 10 years. And then I would tell him,
I didn't say that.
Don't interrupt me, Mayor. Come on.
Okay.
Please,
Okay.
I didn't interrupt you. So he used to say 10 years. Look, crime's reduced the most in 10 years. But I would point out that in 2014, there were 30 murders. And in 2024, there were 106 murders. So he stopped saying that. Now he kind of redoes the numbers to make it sound better for him. But let's look at the numbers because they don't lie. Under the previous administration, Mayor, there were 377 murders. Under your administration to date, there have been 767 murders. That is not a decrease in crime. It's a crime crisis. It's the same reason why the governor deployed the National Guard, saying that our city was in a violent crime crisis and the city was not equipped to handle it. Again, Mayor, another failure on your part. Let me also say, he keeps bringing up this vote of no confidence. Well, Mayor, somebody shared something with me that you might be surprised to know. I was surprised. Only 4 years ago in 2021, the Albuquerque Police Officers Association did a survey. And one of the questions in there was, do you feel supported by the mayor? Basically a vote of confidence. Over 400 people responded to that survey, Mayor. 98% of them said the mayor is not supporting them. That is a vote of no confidence. So take these jabs at me for what it's worth, because Mayor, your hypocrisy knows no limits.
And Mr. Keller, we'll let you respond in just a moment, but staying on this topic, Mr. White, you are campaigning as a law and order candidate who will support police, yet the police union has endorsed your opponent, as mentioned, and when you served as public safety director, officers issued a vote of no confidence in you. How do you explain this apparent lack of support from the ranks?
Well, first of all, let's be very clear about that endorsement. That was by 4 people in the union executive board. I was endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police, the largest police organization in our country, by a unanimous vote of over 60 people. That's important to point out. Let me talk about what happened at the state police. You know, change agents make waves. And I had this crazy notion when I got up there that if you call the state police, you should be able to reach them by 911. And that was not possible 30 years ago. So that is the program that I implemented. And yes, I did get pushback from people because to do it, we had to consolidate some of the dispatch centers. But I can tell you now, there are only 3 consolidated dispatch centers in the state police. It took some time, but my plan worked. And it was important so that we got them started. Let's look at the Albuquerque Police Department. When Mayor Berry took over, he did not know until 2 weeks after he was elected that he had a $68 million deficit. And I can tell you that was very, very difficult because we had to balance that budget. The previous mayor had given everybody in the police department and the fire department giant raises. And we had to freeze them. And was that unpopular? Hell yes, it was unpopular. But we had to do it. They got those pay raises back, and they're better off for it today.
Mr. Keller, would you like to respond?
Well, we're all going to throw a lot of statistics out today, and I think it's important that we just pause for a moment and at least understand what we're both saying. And I want to be really clear. Crime is down in every category for the first time in 10 years. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing because that means it's been going up for 10 years, even before I became mayor. So I acknowledge that. But when it does go down for the first time in 10 years, that is also true. Also with respect to homicides, when I came in, there were about 72. Now, right around now, we have about 59. Those are just what the numbers are. My argument is that we're going in the right direction, and now is no time to turn back. Now, with respect to these other issues, I want to be clear, there is a difference between the FOP and the police officers that serve in APD. One is retirees from every department, and one is actually the officers who work at APD each and every day. And I would never discredit their endorsement of anyone. I didn't do it when they endorse other people that I don't like. They are literally the officers who keep us safe every day, and we should respect their endorsement even if you don't get it. Now, I will say this. There's a reason why these groups had a no confidence vote. The theme is common. You cut their pay at the state police. You cut their resources at the state police. At APD, you cut their pay and you cut their resources, and more importantly, you put them at risk. Your policy to unshackle them is what actually led to the DOJ and to shootings and to them then having repercussions that hurt and held back our police department for almost a decade.
Mr.
You
Keller?
Triggered the DOJ. That's why they don't have confidence.
Oh my God.
Mr. Keller, would you like to respond to his claims that you also had a no confidence vote?
They're just totally different things. I was endorsed by the police. He's referring to a survey that's regularly done. And actually, I think the fact that I did get their endorsement shows how we improved and how we worked together and how we've made things right and rebuilt our police department.
Mr. White, I feel a rebuttal coming.
Thank you.
If you could just be brief, what would
there
you
were
like to say here?
There were a lot of things that need to be corrected. Mayor, you're so desperate to cling to power, you'll say anything. When I was the Secretary of the Department of Public Safety, we gave the state police under Governor Johnson the largest pay increase in the history of the state police. We also increased the manpower, the largest increase, Mayor, in the history of the state police. I know you're desperate, but please, it's just not a good look, and it's kind of sad. It really is. So, and to say the FOP is retirees, it is the largest police organization in the country. And your endorsement came from 4 people from the executive staff. Mayor, I want to repeat this. You have had 767 murders. You've had 58,000 violent crimes since you've been mayor. There were 377 under the previous administration. I get why you want to change the numbers because you don't have results to run on, so you're trying to fabricate your own numbers.
Mr.
It's
White,
not true.
So
Thank
with
you.
that,
I think the difference here is you're trying to change your own past. You literally got in trouble for forcing overtime on the state police. That's why they gave you a no confidence vote, and because you cut their resources. So, the irony is, about clinging to power. You are trying to get back into power. You have run for 4 political offices. You've had a very mixed record, if not scandalous, if not dangerous.
and with that,
And
we're
now
going
you wanna
to
be
go to
mayor.
the
I know,
next
but
question
real
because we want to
quick,
stay
Jessica,
on topic.
I have to, it's important. I did not cut their hours. Mayor.
You did forced
Mr.
overtime. There's a
Mayor,
headline, fact
stop.
check.
It's not. Mayor, Before I became the secretary, a large group of state police officers sued the department because of that very issue. I had to implement that because it was ordered by the court.
Okay.
Please.
And we do want to move on and get to some other questions as well.
Okay.
Looking at what you're going to move forward, Mr. White, police staffing remains below what experts say is needed. How will you increase officer numbers without compromising hiring standards? And how will you retain experienced law enforcement who are leaving the force?
Well, it is a national crisis. It's been very, very difficult. Unfortunately, in our business, it's easier for us to attract officers when our economy slows down. And we've had a really robust economy, and people are picking other professions. I would also say that, I will go out and I will start a new recruiting campaign to get people to join our effort, to join our cause, to make our city safer. I think there's a lot of untapped resources out there of people that are sitting on the sidelines waiting to see what they're going to do, and we will absolutely try to attract them into this effort. Now, as far as the officers on the street, let me say this. Right now, there is the same number of officers who are on patrol, working patrol right now, that there were 30 years ago. And I got that actually from the chief of police 30 years ago. And Mayor, if you have 50 people working in the executive command staff, that means those are people not out taking calls for service.
All right, Mr. White, in the interest of time, I'd like to get back to Mr. Keller and have with the same question. Mr. Keller, is your administration doing enough to increase the number of police officers on our streets?
Well, we're doing two things at the same time. We are absolutely increasing the numbers, and our numbers are up. And the reason why they're up is really two things. Number one is we completed the reforms and we have stable leadership in the department. That has been a huge signal. The other thing is we've taken care of a lot of compensation issues that actually started under Darren's watch. And now our officers are appropriately paid, mostly the highest in the state of New Mexico, as they should be. But the other thing is we are not going to wait for just more officers. We're going to fight crime faster and more effectively. That's why we've invested in a technology crime fighting shield that is drones, it's cameras, it's license plate readers, it's automated speed enforcement, and it's gunshot detection. It's in 20% of the city. If I'm mayor for the next 4 years, I will get it in 100% of the city. That is what's pushing crime down despite the officers' numbers. The other one is civilianization. That's why we've added public service aides, we've tripled the number of public service aides, and why we created the Community Safety Department. It's taken over 100,000 calls that APD didn't have to take, freeing up officers.
Mr. Keller, I think we take your point there. I'd like to move on to a different question, Mr. White. We have business owners saying that repeat offenders are driving them out of business, driving them out of state in some cases. What changes would you advocate at the city or the state level to end this cycle of the revolving door of people coming back, criminals coming back on the streets?
Well, it's an issue that many of us have been fighting for many, many years. When I was DPS secretary, I was successful in removing the day-to-day good time for violent criminals. Today, they serve 85%, and I was involved in that. I was also instrumental in removing the 15-year statute of limitations on murder. I was able to do that because I worked across across party lines to get that done. And so I will do the same thing as it relates to our crime laws. Look, we all can recognize turnstile justice, it's failed us miserably. Our laws in Santa Fe are weak, and it is exactly the reason why so often we have to go to our federal partners. Give you an example. If somebody's felon is caught with a gun, in the state level, he may get a slap on the wrist. In the federal level, they're looking at maybe 5 to 10 years. Listen, the public is frustrated. You know, they don't want to live in a city where we lock up shampoo and disposable razors, but we don't lock up criminals. We have to change that. And the way we do it is working in Santa Fe to change the laws. And most importantly, Mayor, this is one thing that upsets me about when you talk about technology. Technology can support officers. It can't replace them. We have to get back to enforcing the small crimes. If you ignore the small crimes, it breeds bigger and more violent crimes. And that's what we've seen under the mayor's administration.
Thank you, Mr. White. Mr. Keller, what changes will you advocate to prevent repeat offenders from cycling through the system?
Well, there's a couple of things here. First and foremost, we have to invest in fixing the criminal justice system. And that does mean investment across the board, whether it's investing in the courts or the DAs or even the detention system and the juvenile system. And it does mean law changes. That's why I've gathered together leaders from all the local law enforcement agencies each year, and we've put forth the Metro Crime Initiative to the legislature. And we've had some laws changed, and we're still working on changing others. But you've got to do what you can do as the city by yourself, because you can't always rely on the feds or anyone else to bail you out. And that's why we fight crime differently. Technology is actually driven the stopping of the revolving door with respect to putting criminals in jail. And let me explain. Whether you think of the child who was killed after River of Lights crossing the street, or you think of the Muslim shootings and the individuals there, why did we catch those people and arrest them and put them in jail and have the case to keep them in jail? It is because of technology. We hear the gunshot within 40 feet. We turn on the cameras to know what car it looked like that was there. Then we turn on the license plate readers to see the car, and we read the license plate, we show up at their house, we arrest them, and we put them in jail. And we collaborate with others by sharing our technology with others. That is what's known roughly as the clearance rate. And until we implemented this technology platform, we had roughly a 50% chance that people would get away with shooting and killing someone in Albuquerque. Now, because of this technology, there's at least a 95% chance we will catch you and arrest you and put you in jail. Accountability for shooting and killing people is drastically different because of technology and the hard work of officers. That is the fastest way to stop the revolving door.
Thank you, Mr. Keller. And with that, we're going to move on to our next topic. It is homelessness, and we'd like to start with some context for this discussion. The numbers show there are more than 3,000 unhoused people in our city. Many of them are suffering from drug or alcohol addiction. A majority of them are also suffering from some form of mental illness.
And we should also note that a vast majority of them, when asked, refuse services, whether that's a shelter bed, counseling, or treatment for addiction.
And our first question goes to Mr. Keller. What's your vision for solving the homeless problem in our city? You have a minute and a half to respond.
Well, what we have to do is look at this problem from all sides. And so let's start with upstream and how we prevent homelessness in the future. That has to do with fixing our housing challenges, which hopefully we'll talk about later, but it has to do with adding housing stock across the board, changing policies to do that. It also means that we have to make sure and deal with the affordability challenges that our whole country is facing. Whether it's the cost of food or the cost of housing, that is pushing people into homelessness. The other issue is addiction. By far and away, the biggest cause is fentanyl. And so anything we can do to both prevent addiction from fentanyl and then try and get people rehabbed on the back end will help with this issue. Now, in the meantime, we have to make sure that we have a place for everyone to go. Now, that is what the Gateway system is all about. When I came into office, the city took care of 0 people every night on the street, year-round. Now, today, we built out the Family Gateway, the Gateway West, the Gateway Center. We're about to open the Youth Gateway. All of these different programs, including the Recovery Gateway, they actually help people get off the street and find help and a path into housing, because that's how they stay off the streets. And so now every night we take care of 1,000 people off the street. But we have a long way to go, and I understand that. The difference is that we've built a system that can then be expanded and that we know that actually works in the long run. That is how we combat homelessness. Now, on the furthest end, we also absolutely have to do everything we can with respect to rehab. I mentioned the city has roughly 100 beds that are relevant for rehab, but we need thousands, and that's why we need partnership as well.
And that is time, Mr. Keller. Mr. White, if elected, what would you do to solve the homeless crisis in Albuquerque? You also have a minute and a half.
Thank you, Jessica. In the past 8 years, the mayor has spent hundreds of millions of your tax dollars on this issue, and the problem has only gotten worse. In fact, in the last few years, the homeless population has doubled. You know, we now have city employees who are cleaning up human waste. We have business owners that are putting up signs for the homeless that say, please don't poop here. That's really hard to say to you, but it's true. That is not a Chamber of Commerce moment. Let me talk about my plan. We will go to the homeless on day one, and we will tell them that they can take us up on all of these services that are available, whether it's the shelters, whether it's the Gateway Center, whether it's for addiction, whether it's for mental health. They can take us up on that offer. If they refuse that offer, we will make it very clear that the laws will be strictly enforced. It's reprehensible. It's not compassionate that we let people, the homeless people, use drugs and die on our streets every single day. It's not fair to the people that live in those areas. And they're having to deal with the filth. They're having to deal with the discarded needles. It's not fair to the businesses that are struggling to survive. Many of them have shut their doors because the weight of the homeless problem has been just too much for them. And so this is a place where the mayor has failed drastically.
All right, Mr. White, you talked about, you said this before on your first day in office, the gloves would come off in terms of homelessness.
He said that. I didn't say that.
But,
Sorry.
you're talking about your response to homelessness. You're saying if people don't take you up on services, the law will be enforced. What exactly are you saying? What happens to this person that says, no, I want to be here? Are you paint us a picture?
Well, you're painting a picture that happens every single day. The mayor has people go out. It's interesting.
I'm asking what you would do.
But let me explain. That's what happens every single day. They get to do whatever the hell they want right now, Dean. The mayor has said recently that they've been doing the sweeps. They do them at Balloon Fiesta. They do them for State Fair. And now that he's running for re-election. Well, why don't we keep our streets clean and sweep the homeless every single day? Why are we only doing it when we have visitors? So what I'm saying is hundreds of millions of dollars. And you're going to tell me that we don't have the resources to take care of these people who are out on our streets? Look, they stay out there because they want to stay out there. They want to be able to panhandle. They want to be able to buy drugs. They want to be able to buy alcohol. And they want what the mayor has done, which is leave them the hell alone. We're not going to do that. It's not fair. It's destroying our city. And it's going to stop on day one.
So I hear you saying you're not going to leave them alone. My question remains, what does that mean? Are they going to jail?
They will be cited or they will go to jail if they don't move. It is illegal to camp on our streets, on our sidewalks, and in our parks. And it's always been illegal. And so all I'm saying is, look, we will provide them a compassionate way to get help. But we're not going to let them destroy our city the way the mayor has. That's not fair to the people that live here. It's not fair to the businesses that are trying to survive in this environment.
And Mr. White, what happens when you do take them to jail, if you give them trespass citation? What happens on day 3, day 4 when they're released again?
We're going to stay on top of it like a rat on a Cheeto. And the reason why is we can't keep doing this. We have now, for the first time in our city's history that I can remember, we have had our population in Albuquerque decrease. And I think of a lot of it is because of crime and homelessness. We have to address this problem. I know the mayor says it's cruel. I think it's cruel to the families and the businesses that are having to live in this filth and these needles, and it's just not right.
Mr. Keller, I have the same question for you. There is this enormous built-up frustration about homelessness in our community from residents and business owners who are saying nothing's being done about this problem, that these people get pushed away from the front of our business or the front of our home, and the next day they're back. What's the answer here?
Well, it's certainly not to compare the homeless to rats.
I didn't compare him to
yes,
a rat.
you did. You said a rat on a cheetah.
I think Mr. White was talking about himself being...
I think it's actually the reverse. It's a cheetah on a rat. But this is the issue. There are roughly 2,000 homeless kids in the APS system. They're based on what I saw at Thanksgiving dinner at the Family Gateway. We have at least 50 families living in the Gateway. This problem is complex, and you cannot dumb it down to arresting people. That is illegal, it is cruel, and it also won't work. And here's why. There are not enough beds in the jail or in the shelter system to actually arrest all of the homeless. There are not enough officers, as you articulated earlier, to actually spend that much time to do that. Crime would go wild all over the city. Also, to do it in January on day 1 is extremely dangerous. People will freeze and people will die. You simply cannot arrest your way out of this problem, whether you want to or not. Also, it is not an arrestable crime to be homeless in a park. We cite all the time. We clean thousands of camps. And we've done it, by the way, for multiple years since COVID. And so this is what we do. But we acknowledge what was inherent in what our moderators brought up. Either people are arrested and they go back out, or you actually can't physically arrest them because they're not doing an arrestable offense. You are a law enforcement professional, and you are literally pitching that APD should break the law and arrest people for something that they're not allowed to do.
Mr. Keller, if I may, we've had this experience here at News 13 of covering Albuquerque community safety. We follow these people out into the field. They get a complaint about someone who's sleeping in front of their business and defecating in front of their business. ACS shows up. They say, are you here of your own volition, your own will? Yes. Do you want to leave? No. They offer them water. They offer them phone numbers to get help. And they're there because the business owner, the dentist that owns this practice, has people coming and stepping over human waste and worrying about this person who's sleeping in the bushes. So ACS in this case says, okay, have a nice day. I mean, they walk off. They don't call the police to say this person is trespassing. They just walk off. So the business owner in this case has made a phone call. I think Fire Rescue actually got involved first and then called ACS, and then ACS leaves. So what do you say to this business owner that says, look, I've called the number. I've asked for help. I've seen them come and engage this person. I'm still left with this person who's ruining my business.
So if a person is actually on private property ruining a business, that is absolutely a call ACS should send to APD. And I know we do that dozens of times a week. Now, if people come in the morning and there is someone blocking the door, that is different than somebody coming back and doing what you're articulating. And so that should not be the case, and APD absolutely enforces those laws. If they didn't in that particular situation, we should look at why. Was it the backlog, or how did that happen? But the point is, we created ACS. We created ACS to fill a gap that we didn't have before, so they can actually transport from that site to a shelter space. Now, the key is related to addiction. They don't want to leave because they don't want to typically leave their dealer, and they will tell you that if you ask them. So we have to have an intersection, an intervention with respect to addiction. That is how we end that cycle. But at least the city now has a fighting chance. We have ACS, something that I created and want to continue to expand. We have a APD team that responds to those calls, and we do this dozens of times a week all over the city. The question is scale, and I agree we have a long way to go, and we have to scale that, but we actually know what's working. The issue is we have to do more of it. And I will tell you what will never work. Darren's words were literally to take the gloves off, and then he arrested people who were providing food to the homeless. And then he said on Ronchetti's show that he would actually, the answer is, it's not hard, they'll be arrested. So that will never work. That's not a viable alternative.
Mr. Keller, we'll let Mr. White respond.
Yeah, Larry. My expression that I use regularly, a rat on a Cheeto, means that we are not going to tolerate it. We are going to be out there working very hard to clean up our streets. Dean, you asked the mayor a very good question. You said to him, what do you say to that dentist's office that is having to deal with this problem? Let me tell you what the mayor has said. The mayor, in the last 2.5 months that we've been out, is not going to do anything different. So his response to that business owner is what it has been to every one of us who live here. Get over it. We have a homeless problem. Mayor, you talk about, you say this all the time, that there'll be a mass casualty event, that if we took went out there and said, look, here are your options, they would get cited and arrested. Mayor, do you not think these people are freezing, living out on our streets? You know, you try to paint me as this cruel person, but I have to tell you, there is nothing. It is not compassion to have these people living on our streets, dying on our streets every day. What we're offering them is the services we have available to save their life. But I'm also balancing that with the fact that our families and our businesses should not live in these conditions. It's not fair.
Mr. White, with that, before we move on to the next question, I did want to bring up something that happened over the weekend. A bunch of homeless people were found in sweatshirts that said, "I love Tim Keller." Both parties accused each other of handing them out to the homeless. The Republican Party first sent out a statement saying, quote, using the homeless as political pawns is a new low for Tim Keller and shows just how tone deaf he is. Tim Keller's campaign claims Darren White's supporters are behind the sweatshirt, saying using people experiencing homelessness as political props is disgraceful. Mr. White was one of your supporters behind this. We have not heard back from your campaign.
Oh, I released a statement. No, I don't know who did it. I have no idea. In fact, I saw it Wednesday afternoon when I was driving from the VA hospital. I saw all the yellow shirts. I didn't know what it said. But no, listen, there is somebody obviously that is a citizen that is so frustrated with your policies, Mayor, that they use this as a means to express their frustration. And if we're going to talk about condemnation, he's come out and said, but please let me respond, please. He said that he needs me to condemn this. Mayor, if anybody should be condemned, it's you, because you have allowed this problem to get so bad that it is destroying our city. And let me just say this, instead of, listen, I mean, clearly that this issue This is at the forefront. And instead of whining about critics, why don't you do something about the homeless problem? That would benefit our city.
Mr. Keller, would you like to respond about the sweatshirts this weekend?
So first, this is what we are doing every day. And it's the hard work of the city employees, whether it is ACS or it's our housing and homelessness department. We try and address every call we get. And as I've said, we do address dozens a week. The challenge is we have so many more. So I do want to just come back to the idea that yes, we have to do both things, but Darren's answer is not that. It is to arrest people. And that is simply not an acceptable answer. It's not the change you want, even if you're frustrated. And the
Mr. Keller, we were asking about a sweatshirt incident that happened over the weekend.
The sweatshirt example,
yeah,
sure.
We'd like to move on to the next
sweatshirt
topic.
example is a classic case of the kind of attitude that Darren takes to the homeless. You know, no one should be used as a political prop, ever, let alone the homeless. And that is what this is. Someone is handing out these sweaters, taking advantage of the homeless, preying upon them. It's gross, it's disgusting, and it's also not hard to condemn. No one should do that. It doesn't matter if somebody is doing a good job or if we're in a campaign or not. No one should take advantage of the homeless for political gain, and that's exactly what Darren should say.
And with that, we're going to move on to our next topic, which is immigration and Albuquerque's status as a so-called sanctuary city. Mr. White, your position on immigrants who are in the city illegally. You have a minute and a half.
Thank you, Jessica. As I've said, this is not an immigration issue. This is a crime issue. What I have said my plan will be, if somebody is in our country illegally and they get arrested for a crime, we will allow immigration to be in the booking center so that they can check everyone who comes through the doors to make sure that they haven't committed a crime. And let me tell you how bad this problem is, how dangerous this policy is of the mayor. A couple of years ago, there was a man from Venezuela that strangled his girlfriend and threatened to kill her daughter. He was arrested for that. He was then released because of this policy. 1 month later, he committed murder. That's how dangerous this problem is. As I said, this is not controversial. This is common sense. It's the same common sense approach that was used by President Barack Obama, and it was called Secure Communities. And what it said was, look, we will focus on people in our country illegally. This has nothing to do with victims. It has nothing to do with witnesses. It has nothing to do with families. It only has to do with people who are charged with crimes. And I will tell you, it was a smart plan, and it worked, and it was a public safety plan, and we're going to reinstate that.
All right, Mr. White, thank you. Mr. Keller, the same question, your position on people who are in Albuquerque illegally. And of course, when I say illegally, I simply mean here from another country without documentation. You have a minute and a half.
Well, when we think about what we just heard, what does that really mean? Darren has been clear he wants to end our immigrant-friendly policy. If you end that policy, you will have an ICE-friendly policy, and you will get what you see in other cities. You have the fear, and you have literally people pulling people out of cars in masks, going into restaurants that is already happening in Albuquerque in masks without warrants, and detaining people who are all U.S. citizens or that are here legally. They detain first, they arrest first, and then they ask questions and sort out later. That is wrong. That is un-American. I'm not going to allow it in my city. It's not going to happen under my watch. Now, make no mistake, that doesn't mean that we will not arrest anyone who is doing something illegal. If they are doing something illegal, they will be arrested and they will be put in jail. That example that Darren gave you is an example of how the county or the criminal justice system handles this issue. It is not an example of how APD handles this issue. We have to make sure that everyone is safe to call the police. If a woman is being attacked in a domestic violence situation and she wants to call the police, she should not be afraid of deportation of her or somebody staying at her house that she may or may not know their status. Everyone has to be safe to call our police department because they are our police department. They are not ICE agents. They didn't sign up for that job. They don't want that job. That's why our current policy is so important. We have to prevent Trump-style terror from coming into our city, and we also have to make sure that our community is safe for all our families.
Mr. White,
Yeah.
you have said before, if you are here illegally and you commit a crime, you should be turned over to immigration, true?
Yes.
What about a family who's been here for decades, working, oftentimes paying taxes with kids in school, and you have a teenager who vandalizes a school? Do you turn them and their family into ICE?
Jessica, that is feeding right into the mayor's campaign of fear.
But what bar do you have?
But I just said, my policy, my plan is specifically about somebody who is arrested for a crime that's here illegally. I'm not surprised that the mayor brought up President Trump. It's his favorite thing to do to try to inject fear. Mayor, let me say this to you about when you bring up President Trump. You know, when we look at our crime problem, when we look at our homeless problem, we had that problem when President Trump was in office. We had these same problems when Joe Biden was in office. This is not about President Biden. This is not about President Trump. Mayor, this is about you. And I've made it very clear it's not about roundups. Jessica, we have one of the most violent crime rates as a city in the nation. We have to direct our officers' resources and time on cleaning up the mess that the mayor has created in the last 8 years. It has nothing to do with roundups, and I've said that time and time again. He talks about props. You talk about political props. Just listen. He talks about political props. He is using our immigrant community as a prop to inject fear just so he can get reelected. That's sad.
But this is someone who's committed a crime. If they have a teenager who has vandalized a school, they've committed a crime, would you turn in their family?
No, absolutely not. And Jessica, I didn't do it when I was sheriff. Again, I was there for the Secure Communities program under President Obama. And it was only people who were arrested. But let me also say one other thing. You know what we found when we were making those arrests and using the Obama plan? Most of the people, like that Venezuelan, most of the people that are here illegally committing crimes, the victims are the immigrant community, because they know or they think that they won't tell, and they won't report it. And no, this is not. I made it very, very clear. It's not about roundups. It's not about President Trump. It's about public safety. That's it.
Mr. Keller, one final question. What would you say to all of our citizens, this came from a viewer, with dark hair and brown skin, to reassure us that we and our kids aren't going to be targeted for unconstitutional detention, arrest, and deportation? Mr. Keller?
Well, the first thing I would say is that you have to understand the coded language that Darren is using. If you want to arrest the homeless, if you want ICE to look at everyone, those are all his words. You want to unshackle the police, and you want to end our immigrant-friendly status, and you want to have more traffic stops. That is literally the Trump playbook all across the country. You cannot support him for mayor. I will at least walk the walk, which what I've been doing now for 20 years, which is making sure that everyone is treated the same in our city, regardless of their status. That's how we protect our families. That's the moral choice, and it's the choice that I've made dozens of times across my career, so you know that I will stick with that choice.
Mr. Keller, thank you. We're going to move on to our next topic now, quality of life. And the first question is about the economic health of our city. Mr. Keller, how do you plan to grow Albuquerque's economy? You have a minute and a half.
You know, growing our economy is something that we've been building. And it's important to understand that actually our wages are up, our GDP is up. The economy is by no means growing in gangbusters ways, but it is solid and it's strong. And it's because of a couple of things. We're, number one, bringing in large employers. You have to do that. Netflix has been the biggest example that I've been able to do, and of course sustain our growing and wonderful film economy. But the other example of that is betting on industries of the future, like Pacific Fusion. It's an esoteric topic, fusion technology and quantum computing, but these are literally the jobs of the future. And we are one of the best positioned places in America to be the home for those jobs. So that's the long-term bet. But in the short term, we also have to make sure that we support our small businesses. Over 50,000 small businesses in Albuquerque, they make up who we are, whether it's restaurants, whether it's retail, or it's light manufacturing. And that's why our Economic Development Department has focused on our increment of 10. This is the idea that we will help support you to make sure that you can hire 10 new people in the next few years. And that way we actually get the kind of growth in the backbone of our economy that we need. And we also tie it to workforce development, because we need our kids to stay here and have good job opportunities. They can't just always leave the state for job opportunities. And that's why we want the small businesses to hire them and keep them here and bring those kids that have left back home to New Mexico.
Mr. White, your plans for growing the city's economy, you have a minute and a half as well.
Thank you, Jessica. The first thing that we have to do, and I know the mayor's going to be upset because I say this, is we have to tackle our crime and homelessness problem. You know, 2/3 of all jobs that are created in our community are created by small businesses. And Mayor, I have to tell you, the way that you've been treating them, you haven't been their friend. Because of our crime and homelessness problem, they're having to pay more for security services that they've never had to pay for before. They are now paying more for insurance rates. In some cases, it triple, quadruple, because the crime problem is so bad, many of the insurers won't even provide insurance to our businesses. We need to go after the red tape. The zoning department is taking forever to get plans through and then back out to the builders. And the problem with that is, any builder will tell you, if they're having to wait a year or 2 years to start the project, they've already invested all of that money, and it kills deals. Time kills deals. And so what I would have recommended, that we outsource the zoning department, that we privatize it, so that we can get that process sped up, so that we can be a business-friendly community. Because right now, we're not. You know, they say that your business corridor is your welcome mat to any community. Can you imagine when he talks about all those fancy words? If these people were coming in from out of state and they drove up Central, they'd probably go back to the airport and leave.
All right, Mr. White, thank you. Mr. Keller, a specific question for you. For decades, the city of Albuquerque has worked to revitalize the downtown core. There are a lot of urban planners who will tell you that one of the most important ways, maybe the essential way of doing that, is to bring a stadium or a similar facility there. And given that, what do you say to the criticism that the New Mexico United Soccer Stadium being put at Balloon Fiesta Park is a massive missed opportunity on your part?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think first I just want to touch on all these companies that move here. First off, it's great that they're moving here, and they do drive up and down Central, and they all say the same thing. They say, you've got the same problems our town does. And then they're impressed by the fact that we're actually doing real things to try and address those issues. And I know that because as mayor, you actually have those conversations personally with them. One reason why these companies choose us is literally because of our leadership. And I'm grateful that they believe in our city and they believe in the vision that I'm bringing forth. And that's why they're moving their workforce here. Now, with respect to downtown and the United Stadium, of course, I should remind voters it was just 4 years ago that I did put a stadium on the ballot. And folks voted it down almost 2-1 to have it downtown. I really wish it would be downtown. That was always my first choice. But I think this is a good example of leadership. You know, I didn't give up on the stadium. I just said, let's do it in a way that respects the voters. The voters didn't want the city paying for it, and the voters, in this case, didn't want it downtown. So we're doing it at the Balloon Fiesta, and the team is paying for most of the stadium except for the infrastructure. And we're building on the fact that we already have existing parking and traffic patterns and all the kinds of things that we need to have that stadium there. So it's a way to utilize our Balloon Fiesta better. And I think that's a good example of essentially making lemonade, whether it was the art project that I fixed up and at least it works more or less, or it's the stadium. I will not give up on these big ideas, but I will listen and I will adjust and I'll be flexible and I'll get it done, but I'm going to do it in a way that also works for the community. And now that's what's happening with the United Stadium out of the Balloon Fiesta.
All right, thank you, Mr. Keller. Mr. White, any thoughts on the placement of the United Stadium at Balloon Fiesta Park? Would you work to move it?
No, I think the mayor was right. This proposal went to the voters and they soundly rejected it, 2-1. And so, you know, they came up with a plan to try to take it out to the Balloon Fiesta. You know, I think, like I said, quality of life projects are good for any city because you hear it so much. It's like, you know, there's never anything fun to do. You talk about downtown. You know, it is critically important for any city to thrive. It's to have a big, vibrant and strong downtown. One of those examples I gave you before about insurance, I know somebody personally that has a bar downtown and a nightclub. And when he bought it 6 years ago, him and his partners, his insurance was $38,000 a year. It is now $132,000 a year because of crime. We have videos every weekend. Mayor, do you see them? There's videos every weekend.
And Mr. White, I am going to interrupt you on that as we were talking about Balloon Fiesta, or about the United Stadium at Balloon Fiesta Park, and we do want to be able to get to a lot of questions. Sure. A question from one of our viewers that involves riding the bus. Riding the bus is free in Albuquerque, but many people say it's not safe. One viewer says that they see homeless people get on the bus and start doing drugs. They say there's also a problem with indecency on the buses and that most drivers will ignore the behavior. Mr. Keller, would you consider charging bus fare again, quote, and this is from a viewer, so we can keep the homeless off the buses and using drugs in front of our children?
So I ride the bus as well, and I see what you see, and I don't like it either. Our buses are in a difficult situation right now. I understand that. But I know that we can do better than trying to go back into a program that actually we were an innovator getting rid of. Having free buses is a good thing for a city. So I want to keep them free. And by the way, it is a city council law, so just so you know, it's not just up to the mayor. But I want to keep them free, but I also want to make them safe. And so that's why we decided around this summer to have a layered approach to ramp up for safety on our buses. And so now we do have security at most of the stops on Central. We also hired a new type of officer, a transit security officer. We have 20 of them now riding the buses. And we're using technology. We have the CSAY app, which is a peer-based confidential reporting system so that we can address problems literally at the next stop. Now, most of this has been rolling out this fall, so it has a ways to go. But we believe that we actually can keep our buses safe and keep them free. And I think that's the best Albuquerque can be. Going back and just ending that program, we still had issues even when we had that program. So I want to make sure that we keep moving forward and we don't trade off innovation for safety, because we can do both.
Okay, Mr. White, to you the same question. How do we make our buses safe and a place that people feel it's okay to bring their children?
Let's go back historically. This was a pilot project, as the mayor said, and as soon as it was implemented, crime was increased on our buses by 40%. So yes, we need to go back to charging, but that is a Band-Aid. That is a Band-Aid approach. We have to tackle the crime and homelessness problem that is infecting our transit system. Let me say this. We had a deputy director of the transit system literally say that the problem is these people are coming onto the buses and they are socking our drivers in the face and breaking their nose. I mean, it's not safe for our drivers. It's not safe for the public. We need to do something to turn it around, and I think one way to do it is to charge. Let me just say this. You know, the mayor turned our streets over to the homeless, and it was a disaster. Why are we surprised that the mayor turned our buses over to the homeless and it was any different? We need to get back to charging. We need to get back to cleaning up our buses so they're safe for our drivers and the public who need that transportation every day.
And with that, we'd like to lighten the discussion slightly and ask each candidate what you admire or like about your opponent. Mr. White, something you admire or like about Mr. Keller?
Sure. Mayor, I got to see you around your children a couple of times, and I have to tell you, I was really impressed at the way they looked at him. I could tell that he's a good papa, and his kids love him very, very much, and I admired it because that's important to me as well. And so, good for you, Mayor. Good kids, and they love their dad.
Mr. White, in this day and age, we're heartened, by the way, by that comment. Thank you. Mr. Keller, a positive thought about Mr. White?
You know, we actually had a little fun at the track together, so I remember that well, and I'll say a couple of things about Darren. Number one is he was great in that environment. I mean, we were in the campaign. This was, I think, around the state fair, and you know, we just had a nice chat, and he met my kids, and I met some of his friends, and he taught me about the races and like how to bet, which I didn't really understand.
Come on, man, there's got to be something better than I taught you how to run the ponies. Come on, buddy.
Well, I enjoyed it.
Darren is really good at the ponies.
But I will tell you this, which he just displayed. He does have a great sense of humor, and he keeps that through thick and thin, even when things are stressful, and even in the debate environment. And I appreciate his sense of humor. And I will tell you, I think he's good on camera and on radio. You have a lot of media savvy, and I think it's shown in this campaign that you know what to do when the lights are on.
I only had to say one thing, Mayor, but I keep going. I like where you're going with
yeah. Don't cut him off, right?
Exactly.
All right, we will now move on to our closing statements with each candidate given a minute now to tell the voters why they should be Albuquerque's next mayor. And by virtue of the coin toss, we remind you we start with Mr. White.
Yes. Thank you, Dean. The stakes have never been higher in this election. No matter how many times the mayor says it, over and over and over again, the facts don't lie. Crime and homelessness are destroying our city. The mayor has served for 8 years, and he has failed. We can do better. We know we can do better. I've said I will only serve for 4 years, that I will appoint a bipartisan cabinet, Democrats, Republicans, independents, whatever. I'm just interested in attracting the best and the brightest. We will go in on the first day, roll up our sleeves, get to work, and clean up our city and make it safe and strong. You know, if the mayor would have worked as hard and fought as hard for our families and our businesses as he has fought to save his political career in this election, we wouldn't even be here tonight. If you want change, vote for it. I'm Darren White, and I respectfully ask for your vote.
Mr. White, thank you. Mr. Keller, why should voters support you at the ballot box? You have 1 minute.
Well, I think it's important to understand that if you want a leader who is willing to roll up their sleeves and do the hard work no matter what, that is what I've demonstrated. In contrast, Darren has resigned from all 3 public jobs that he has had. He's only running for 4 years because that is longer than most of the public jobs he's even stayed in, whether it's the no confidence votes or it's quitting 3 times on you. That is what he will do again. This choice is much bigger than him and I, though. This is about, do we go backwards or do we go forwards? Do we go backwards into the world of Darren White that is filled with arrests, it's filled with roundups, it's filled with fear, and it's filled with one answer to every single question, which is that you should be scared? That is wrong. We can also go forward and choose me in a way that tries to help everyone in our city, that says we need an answer, even if it's tough, for every challenge that we have. It takes time, it's hard work, but that's what serving our city is all about. It's my hometown. I was born and raised here, and I believe in Albuquerque, and I'm not going to give up on Albuquerque.
All right, Mr. Keller, thank you. Mr. Keller and Mr. White, we thank you so much for taking part in this KRQE News 13 mayoral debate. It has been a real pleasure.
And we want to remind our viewers that early voting started today at 17 locations across the city, and you can cast your ballot even if you did not vote in the November election.
It is too late, by the way, to request an absentee ballot, but if you have one, you must have it returned by 7 p.m. on Election Day. You can mail those in or drop them off at any polling location.
And Election Day, of course, is Tuesday, December 9th. Thank you for watching.
Yeah, I don't know if it's live or not, right?